She endured the pain as her billionaire CEO husband flaunted his pregnant mistress, but 5 years later, a hidden recording revealed the truth. "Nathaniel, please, just tell me the truth. Do you love her?" His voice came next, cold and cutting through the expensive sound system like a knife. "Love? Vivienne, I married you because you were safe, quiet. You had the right bloodline for the company's image, your father's medical research connections. That's it." A collective gasp rippled through 300 of the most powerful people in the pharmaceutical industry. But the recording wasn't finished. "Jade is exciting. She's ambitious. She matches my energy. And yes, the baby is mine. I'm going to marry her." If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, I need you to drop a comment right now. Just say, "I'm with you, Cedar Light," and tell me where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button, because this story has more twists than you can imagine. And smash that like button if you believe the truth always finds a way to surface. Now let me show you what really happened that night. Nathaniel lunged toward the stage, but it was too late. His own voice continued, louder now, filling every corner of the ballroom. "Your father's Alzheimer's treatment? That's about to make me $3 billion, and legally it's all mine now. You signed everything over, remember?" The woman at the microphone, the woman in the crimson dress who had been invisible to society for 5 years, smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a vengeful smile, just the quiet, terrifying smile of someone who had waited a very long time for the truth to finally surface. But to understand how one hidden recording brought a $10 billion empire to its knees, we need to go back. Back to the night she lost everything. Back to the moment her phone started recording without her even knowing. Back to the gala where her billionaire husband paraded his pregnant mistress in front of everyone she knew, wearing her grandmother's necklace, and destroyed her in front of 300 witnesses. Have you ever been so humiliated that you couldn't even cry? So betrayed that your body just went numb, like you were watching your life fall apart from somewhere outside yourself? That's where Vivienne Cole's story begins. At a charity gala she spent 8 months organizing, wearing a dress she spent weeks choosing, standing in a room full of people she thought were her friends, watching her husband walk in late with his assistant, his hand possessively on her very pregnant belly, looking at her with the kind of tenderness he hadn't shown his wife in 2 years. But what none of them knew, what Nathaniel Harrison didn't know as he confessed everything, in his private office that night, was that Vivienne's phone was recording. Every word, every confession, every threat, every cruel revelation. And 5 years later, that recording would surface at the worst possible moment for him. Or the best possible moment for her. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, I need you to drop a comment right now. Just say, "I'm with you, Cedar Light." Hit that subscribe button because this story has more twists than you can imagine, and I promise you, the justice that's coming will restore your faith that the truth always finds its way to the surface. Smash that like button if you believe that patience and preparation can defeat power and corruption. Now, let me show you what really happened that night. Let me show you how a woman they called weak, a woman they pitied, a woman who disappeared for 5 years, came back and burned their entire world down with nothing but the truth. 5 years earlier, the grand ballroom of the Ashford Hotel glittered with crystal, chandeliers, and the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. The annual Harrison Medical Foundation Gala was the event of the season. $200,000 had been raised before the doors even opened. Another $500,000 was expected by the end of the night. Every detail had been planned with meticulous care. The ice sculptures, the centerpieces, the 5-course meal, the silent auction, the program. Vivienne Cole Harrison had spent 8 months planning this night. 8 months coordinating with caterers and florists and musicians. 8 months reviewing seating charts and menu options and speeches. This was her event, her one contribution to her husband's empire that actually mattered. Her one night a year when people looked at her with something other than polite dismissal. She stood near the entrance in a navy gown, greeting guests as they arrived, smiling, shaking hands, accepting compliments on the decorations with gracious humility. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon. Her makeup was subtle. Her jewelry was minimal. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, The perfect, quiet, unremarkable wife of a very important man. Vivienne, darling. Cassandra Whitmore air-kissed both her cheeks, a cloud of expensive perfume overwhelming the scent of the floral arrangements. This is absolutely stunning. You've outdone yourself. Thank you, Cassandra. I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. Where's Nathaniel? I haven't seen him yet. Vivian's smile didn't waver, even though she'd been asking herself the same question for the past hour. He's running late. A last-minute conference call with the board. You know how it is. Of course. Cassandra's eyes gleamed with something Vivienne couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe. Or anticipation. Well, I'm sure he'll be here soon. More guests arrived. More greetings. More compliments. More questions about Nathaniel's absence. Vivian's face started to hurt from smiling. Her feet ached in her heels. And still, her husband didn't arrive. By the time dinner was served, his seat remained empty. Vivian sat at the head table, picking at her salmon, answering concerned questions with practiced ease. He'll be here soon, just delayed. You know how important his work is. Yes, I'm sure everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine. She could feel it in the way people were starting to whisper, in the way their eyes would dart to her, then away, in the way conversations would stop when she approached. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what yet. And then the ballroom doors opened. Nathaniel Harrison walked in, tall and commanding in his custom tuxedo. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward him. But they didn't stay on him. They moved immediately to the woman on his arm, Jade Monroe, his executive assistant, 26 years old, beautiful, ambitious, and visibly, undeniably 6 months pregnant. Vivian's fork clattered against her plate. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the sudden hush that had fallen over their section of the room. She watched, frozen, as her husband escorted his pregnant assistant to their table. Watched as he pulled out a chair for her. Watched as his hand lingered on her shoulder, possessive and tender. Watched as Jade smiled up at him with the kind of intimacy that made Vivian's stomach turn. Sorry we're late. Nathaniel's voice carried across the table, casual and unbothered. Traffic was terrible. He said we, like it was the most natural thing in the world to bring his pregnant assistant to his wife's charity gala. Like he hadn't just walked in holding another woman's arm while his wife sat waiting at the head table. Vivienne couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her mind was trying to process what she was seeing, but nothing made sense. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding, some kind of mistake. Nathaniel wouldn't. He couldn't. But then Jade turned, and Vivian saw it, hanging from Jade's neck, catching the light from the chandelier above. Her grandmother's necklace, the antique sapphire pendant that had been in her family for 4 generations. The necklace Vivienne had sent to be repaired 3 weeks ago. The necklace that was supposed to be at the jeweler's. Vivienne. Nathaniel finally acknowledged her, his tone pleasant and detached. Everything looks great. You did a wonderful job. She stared at him, at this man she'd been married to for 5 years, this man she'd loved, this man she'd built her entire life around, and she didn't recognize him at all. Nathaniel. Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. Can I speak with you? Privately. Can it wait? We just sat down. No. It can't wait. Something in her tone must have registered because his expression shifted slightly. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation. Fine. Give me a minute. But he didn't get up. Instead, he turned to Jade, leaning close to whisper something that made her laugh. The sound was light and carefree, and it cut through Vivian like glass. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stood. Let's make this quick. I'm starving. Vivian rose on shaking legs. She could feel every eye in the room on her as she walked toward the exit, her husband trailing behind her with obvious reluctance. The whispers started before they even left the ballroom. She could hear them, soft and vicious, following her into the hallway. Did you see? She must have known. How humiliating. Poor thing. Actually, I heard she's been impossible to live with. Can you blame him? The corridor outside the ballroom was blessedly empty. Vivian turned to face Nathaniel, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. What is happening right now? What do you mean? Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. You brought Jade to my event. She's wearing my grandmother's necklace. And she's pregnant, Nathaniel. Very obviously pregnant. He sighed, like she was being tedious. Vivian, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? You walked into my gala with your pregnant assistant on your arm, and I'm the one making a scene? She's not just my assistant. The words hung in the air between them. Vivienne felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. What? I didn't want to do this here. I was going to talk to you next week, but since you're pushing, he straightened his cufflinks, not quite meeting her eyes. Jade and I have been together for 18 months. The baby's mine. We're in love. I'm going to marry her. Vivian couldn't breathe. The hallway seemed to close in around her, the walls pressing closer and closer. You're lying. I'm not. 18 months? Nathaniel, 18 months ago we were in Paris for our anniversary. You told me you loved me. You told me we were forever. I know what I said. His voice was flat, emotionless. I was wrong. People change, Vivian. Feelings change. So you've been lying to me for a year and a half while I've been planning this event, while I've been trying to make you happy, while I've been being your wife. You've been with her? It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. Tears were burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Make me understand how this is anything other than you cheating on me and humiliating me in front of everyone we know. Nathaniel looked at her then, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes was worse than anger or guilt. It was indifference. I think we should go somewhere more private. My office. We can talk there. I don't want to talk in your office. I want you to explain to me right now. Vivienne. His tone was the one he used with difficult employees. Firm. Condescending. Final. Either we go to my office and have this conversation like adults, or I go back in there and finish my dinner. Your choice. She wanted to scream, wanted to slap him, wanted to collapse on the marble floor and sob until someone came and carried her away. Instead, she heard herself say, Fine, your office. They walked through the hotel in silence, past the ballroom where her carefully planned event was continuing without her, past the lobby where the night staff watched with undisguised curiosity, up the elevator to the executive floor where Nathaniel kept a private suite of offices. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was the click of Vivienne's heels on polished floors and the thunder of her heartbeat in her ears. Nathaniel unlocked his office door and held it open. Vivienne walked inside, her mind racing. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Any moment now she was going to wake up and realize this was just a nightmare. Just her anxiety manifesting before a big event. Just her imagination running wild. But when Nathaniel closed the door behind them and turned to face her, she knew. This was real. This was happening. Her life was falling apart in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She reached into her jacket pocket for her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She needed to call someone. Her father, maybe, except he'd passed away 2 years ago. Her friends, except were they really her friends, or just Nathaniel's social circle? She pulled up her voice memo app, intending to leave herself a note. Remember to call the caterer about the final bill. Something normal. Something to anchor herself to reality. She hit record and slipped the phone back into her pocket, forgetting about it entirely as Nathaniel started talking. She didn't know it then, but that phone was still recording, capturing every word that was about to be said, building an evidence file that would change everything 5 years later. Sit down, Vivienne. I don't want to sit down. I want you to explain what's happening. Nathaniel moved behind his desk, putting the massive piece of furniture between them like a barrier. I told you. Jade and I are together. She's pregnant. I'm going to marry her. You're married to me. Not for much longer. I'm filing for divorce next week. My lawyer already has the papers drawn up. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing a business merger instead of the end of their marriage, made something crack inside her chest. How long have you been planning this? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. All of this matters, Nathaniel. We've been married for 5 years. We took vows. We built a life together. You don't get to just throw that away and act like it means nothing. What life, Vivienne? He leaned back in his chair, his expression almost bored. Be honest with yourself. What kind of life did we really have? You playing house while I built an empire? You organizing charity events while I changed the pharmaceutical industry? You being quiet and pleasant and utterly forgettable while I became someone who actually matters? Each word was a knife. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You want to know the truth? I'll give you the truth. He stood, walked around the desk, stopped a few feet away from her, close enough that she could see the coldness in his eyes. I married you because you were safe, quiet. You had the right bloodline for the company's image. Your father's medical research connections. That's it. Vivienne felt the room spin. My father, Dr. Marcus Cole, renowned Alzheimer's researcher. Do you know how many doors his name opened for me? How many investors were willing to meet with me because I was his son-in-law? You were useful, Vivienne. That's all you ever were. I loved you. Her voice broke on the words. I know you did. That made it easier. Made what easier? Nathaniel smiled, and it was the cruelest thing she'd ever seen. Everything. The marriage, the access to your father's research, the transfer of intellectual property, all of it. What are you talking about? Your father's breakthrough treatment for Alzheimer's, the one he spent 20 years developing, the one he left to you in his trust when he died. Do you remember signing those papers 3 years ago? The ones I told you were just standard estate management documents? Vivienne's mind raced back. She remembered. Nathaniel had brought home a stack of papers, told her they needed her signature to properly manage her father's estate. She'd trusted him. She'd signed everything he put in front of her. Those weren't estate management documents. Nathaniel's voice was pleasant now, almost cheerful. Those were intellectual property transfers. You signed over all rights to your father's research to Harrison Pharmaceutical. To me, no. The word came out as a whisper. No, I wouldn't have. But you did. I have the notarized documents. Your signature on every page. Completely legal. Completely binding. That's fraud. That's forgery. It's neither. You signed willingly. The fact that you didn't read what you were signing isn't my problem. It's yours. Vivienne grabbed the edge of his desk to steady herself. The treatment. The one you've been developing for the past 2 years. The one that's about to go to market. That's my father's research? Was your father's research. Now it's mine. The patents are in my name. The FDA approval is under Harrison Pharmaceutical. And when it launches in 6 months, it's going to make me $3 billion. Probably more. You stole my father's life work. I didn't steal anything. You gave it to me. Legally. Willingly. Because you trusted me. Because you loved me. Because you were too naive to protect yourself. Vivienne couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Couldn't process what she was hearing. Her father had spent 2 decades researching Alzheimer's disease. It had been his passion, his purpose. He'd died before he could see his treatment help people. And she'd unknowingly given it all away to a man who'd married her as a business transaction. Why? The question came out broken. Why marry me at all? If all you wanted was the research, you could have approached my father professionally, made a deal, a partnership. Why this? Because your father would never have sold to me. He had this annoying moral code about his research being accessible to everyone, not just profitable for corporations. But his daughter? Nathaniel shrugged. His grieving, lonely daughter who'd just lost her mother. She was much more manageable. All I had to do was be charming, attentive, tell you what you wanted to hear, and you fell for it completely. I fell in love with you. You fell in love with who you thought I was. There's a difference. He checked his watch. Look, I don't want to drag this out. I'll give you the house in Portland and $50,000. That's more than generous, considering you brought nothing to this marriage except your father's research. I brought nothing? Vivienne's voice was rising now, hysteria creeping in at the edges. I gave you 5 years of my life. I supported your career. I made myself smaller so you could feel bigger. I gave up my friends, my interests, my entire identity to be Mrs. Nathaniel Harrison. And you're saying I brought nothing? Exactly. You gave up things that didn't matter to become someone who still didn't matter. That's not my fault, Vivian. That's yours. You chose to be invisible. You chose to be forgettable. You chose to build your entire existence around a man who was never going to love you back. The words hit like physical blows. Because he was right. She had chosen all of those things. She'd spent 5 years making herself smaller, quieter, less. She'd convinced herself it was love. That sacrifice was partnership. That losing herself meant finding them. Take the settlement. Nathaniel's voice softened slightly, which somehow made it worse. Take the money and the house and go live a quiet life somewhere. Find someone who actually wants what you have to offer. But if you fight me on this, Vivian, you will lose. And I'll make sure you lose everything. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. I have lawyers, resources, power. What do you have? No job, no money except what I give you, no real friends, because you've spent 5 years being my shadow instead of your own person. You have nothing. You are nothing without me. That's not true, isn't it? Prove me wrong then. Fight me. Hire a lawyer. Try to contest the intellectual property transfer. Try to claim you were coerced. And while you're doing that, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person your father really was. What are you talking about? I have documents that suggest your father's research was unethical. Patient consent issues, fabricated data. None of it's true, of course, but it won't matter. By the time my PR team is done, Dr. Marcus Cole's legacy will be ruined. His name will be synonymous with scientific fraud. The treatment will still go to market under my name, and your father will be remembered as a disgrace. Is that what you want? Vivian stared at him, at this stranger wearing her husband's face, at this monster who'd systematically destroyed her life while she smiled and thanked him for loving her. You would destroy my father's reputation? A man who spent his entire life trying to help people? In a heartbeat. If you make this difficult, I will burn his legacy to the ground. I'll burn your entire life to the ground. And when I'm done, there will be nothing left of you or him except cautionary tales. Her phone was still recording in her pocket, still capturing every word, every confession, every threat. But Vivienne didn't remember, didn't know. All she could think about was the cruelty in her husband's eyes and the certainty in his voice. So here's what's going to happen. Nathaniel pulled an envelope from his desk drawer and placed it in front of her. These are the divorce papers. You're going to sign them. You're going to take the settlement. You're going to leave quietly. And you're going to be grateful I'm giving you anything at all. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you. Completely, publicly, permanently. Your choice, Vivian. Be smart for once in your life. She looked at the envelope, at the papers that would end her marriage and hand over everything to a man who'd never loved her at all. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them still. I need time to think. You have until Monday. After that, the offer's off the table and we do this the hard way. Vivian picked up the envelope with numb fingers. She needed to get out of this office, out of this building, away from this man who just casually admitted to marrying her for corporate espionage and was now threatening to destroy her father's memory if she didn't comply. She walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when Nathaniel spoke again. One more thing. Don't bother looking for support from our friends. They're my friends, Vivian. My business associates. My social circle. You were just the wife they tolerated, because they had to. None of them are going to choose you over me. None of them ever saw you as anything more than an accessory I was replacing. You're alone in this. Remember that. Vivian opened the door and walked out. Down the hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby, out into the cold night air. She walked for 3 blocks before her legs gave out and she collapsed. On a bench in a small park, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Only then did she reach for her phone. Only then did she see the voice memo app, still running, still recording. She stared at it for a long moment, then pressed stop. 93 minutes. The entire conversation captured, every word, every confession, every threat. She should use it. Should call a lawyer right now. Should fight back with the evidence she'd accidentally collected. But when she thought about it, really thought about it, all she could see was her father's name being dragged through the mud. All she could imagine was Nathaniel making good on his threats. All she could feel was the crushing weight of her own powerlessness. She saved the recording, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, labeled it with the date, and then she went home to the empty house, crawled into bed, and waited for morning. By Monday, she'd signed the papers. By Wednesday, the divorce was filed. By Friday, she'd packed her things and moved to Portland. And by the end of the month, Vivian Cole Harrison had disappeared completely. Society columns ran stories about the divorce. Poor Nathaniel, they said, finally free from that dull, clinging wife. How wonderful that he found someone who actually matched his brilliance. Jade Monroe, they said, was exactly what a man like him deserved. Beautiful, ambitious, the perfect partner for a visionary. The wedding was 3 months later, lavish, covered by every major publication. Nathaniel Harrison and Jade Monroe, the power couple of the pharmaceutical world. The photos showed them looking radiant, successful, unstoppable. No one mentioned Vivienne. She'd already been forgotten. But in a small apartment in Portland, the woman they'd forgotten was doing something they never expected. She was preparing. The apartment Vivienne rented in Portland was nothing like the estate she'd left behind. 700 square feet on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The heating was temperamental. The neighbors were loud. The view was of a parking lot and a laundromat, but it was hers, paid for with money she'd earned, not money she'd been given as a consolation prize for having her life destroyed. She'd taken the $50,000 settlement and divided it into 3 categories: $15,000 for living expenses, $15,000 for education, $20,000 for her father's legacy. Every dollar had a purpose. Every cent had a plan. The first thing she did was change her name. Legally, back to her mother's maiden name, Vivian March. It felt like shedding a skin, like stepping out of a cage she hadn't realized she'd been living in. Vivian Harrison had been weak, invisible, forgettable. Vivian March was going to be something else entirely. The second thing she did was get a job. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that required explanations. She found work at the Portland Medical Research Library, cataloging documents and helping researchers find obscure references. The pay was modest, but the access was priceless. She spent her days surrounded by medical journals and patent databases and research papers. And every night she stayed late, using the library's resources to teach herself intellectual property law. The third thing she did was enroll in online law school. It took every bit of her $15,000 education budget, and then some. She worked 40 hours a week at the library, studied 60 hours a week for her degree, and slept when she could. There was no social life, no dating, no distractions, just work and study, and the slow, methodical building of the knowledge she'd need to fight back. But she wasn't ready to fight yet. Not even close, because Vivian had learned something important from her marriage. Emotion without strategy is just noise. Anger without evidence is just bitterness. If she was going to take down Nathaniel Harrison, she needed to be smarter, better prepared, and infinitely more patient than he could ever imagine. So she waited, and while she waited, she watched. Nathaniel's life became everything he'd dreamed of. The Alzheimer's treatment, her father's treatment, launched 6 months after the divorce. The media coverage was rapturous, a breakthrough medication that could slow cognitive decline by up to 40%. Millions of families given hope, billions of dollars in projected revenue, and Nathaniel Harrison positioned at the center of it all, the brilliant CEO who'd brought this miracle to market. Vivian watched the press conferences from her tiny apartment, watched him stand in front of cameras and talk about innovation and compassion and his commitment to helping people, watched him accept awards and accolades and praise for work he'd stolen, watched him pose for magazine covers with Jade by his side, both of them, smiling like they'd built something beautiful instead of something stolen. The treatment was approved in 14 countries within the first year. Harrison Pharmaceuticals' stock price tripled. Nathaniel's personal net worth reached $10 billion. He was named one of Time magazine's most influential people. The president invited him to the White House. Universities offered him honorary degrees. And through it all, Not once did he mention Dr. Marcus Cole. Not once did he credit the man who'd spent 20 years developing the research. Her father had been erased from his own legacy, footnoted in a few academic papers, mentioned in passing as someone who'd done preliminary work. But the breakthrough, the genius, the glory, all of it went to Nathaniel. Vivian saved every article, documented every patent, built spreadsheets comparing her father's original research to Nathaniel's filed patents. The similarities weren't just close. They were identical. Entire sections copied word for word. Formulas transcribed exactly. Test results duplicated. It was blatant theft, but it was also legally protected because she'd signed those papers. Because she'd trusted him. But trust could be broken, and signatures could be contested. And fraud, if proven, could invalidate everything. She just needed proof, real proof. Not just the recording of a private conversation, but documentation that would hold up in court, evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. And she needed the perfect moment, because taking down someone as powerful as Nathaniel Harrison required more than just being right. It required timing. 2 years into her exile, Vivian met Ruth Castellano. She was 83 years old, sharp as a scalpel, and the most brilliant patent attorney Vivian had ever encountered. She came into the library looking for research on a case, and Vivian helped her find it. They started talking. Ruth asked what brought Vivian to Portland. Vivian, tired of lying, told her the truth. Ruth listened to the entire story without interrupting. Then she listened to the recording. And when it was finished, she looked at Vivian with eyes that had seen every kind of human cruelty and said, "You have the truth. Now you need the strategy." "I don't know where to start." "Yes, you do. You've been starting for 2 years. You just didn't know what you were building toward." Ruth pulled out a legal pad and a pen. "Tell me everything you've documented." They spent 6 hours in a library conference room that night. Vivian showed Ruth everything. The recording, the spreadsheets, the patent comparisons, the timeline, the forged signatures, all of it. Ruth asked questions, took notes, and occasionally smiled in a way that made Vivian think of a shark circling prey. "This is good work," Ruth said finally. "Better than good. But you're missing the most important piece." "What?" "Leverage. Right now, you have evidence of fraud. That's significant. But Nathaniel has power, money, and an army of lawyers. If you go after him now, it becomes a he-said-she-said situation. You're recording against his legal documents. You might win, but it'll take years and cost millions and destroy you in the process. So what do? You wait for the moment when he has the most to lose. When the stakes are so high that the truth will do maximum damage. When his empire is at its peak and one push will send it all tumbling down. When will that be?" Ruth smiled. "When he tries to go public. When he tries to turn Harrison Pharmaceutical into a publicly traded company. That's when your evidence won't just be personally damaging. It'll be financially catastrophic. Stock fraud, investor fraud, federal crimes with federal consequences. How do I know when that's going to happen? You watch, you wait, and you prepare. In the meantime, you finish law school, you pass the bar, you become someone who can't be dismissed as a bitter ex-wife. You become an attorney who specializes in intellectual property law. You build credibility. And when the moment comes, you strike." So that's exactly what Vivian did. Ruth became her mentor, her friend, her chosen family. She taught Vivian everything she knew about patent law, about building airtight cases, about finding the weakness in seemingly perfect defenses. In exchange, Vivian helped Ruth with her caseload, learning by doing, growing stronger with every case. 3 years after the divorce, Vivian passed the bar exam. She did it under her new name, Vivian March, and no one connected her to the woman who disappeared from Nathaniel Harrison's life. She started taking small cases, pro bono work mostly, helping independent inventors protect their ideas from corporate theft. Every case felt personal. Every victory felt like practice for the main event. And while Vivian was building herself into someone formidable, Nathaniel's life was developing cracks. The marriage to Jade wasn't the fairy tale the magazines portrayed. Vivian knew because she'd learned to watch carefully. Little signs that most people missed. Jade's smile in photos that didn't quite reach her eyes, Nathaniel's hand on her back that looked more controlling than affectionate, the way they stood just slightly too far apart at events, the rumors, whispered but persistent, that Jade was demanding and difficult, that Nathaniel was controlling and cold, that the power couple wasn't quite as powerful as they appeared. They had 2 children now, a son and a daughter, beautiful kids who appeared in carefully staged family photos and then disappeared back into the care of nannies and private schools. Nathaniel rarely mentioned them in interviews. Jade mentioned them constantly, but always in the context of how difficult motherhood was, how much she sacrificed, how lucky the children were to have her. But Vivienne didn't care about Nathaniel's marriage. She cared about Harrison Pharmaceutical. And in the 5th year after her divorce, she saw the announcement she'd been waiting for. Harrison Pharmaceutical was going public. An initial public offering scheduled for 6 months out. Projected company valuation of $15 billion. The Alzheimer's treatment, the one built on her father's stolen research, was the cornerstone of that valuation. Investors were already lining up. Financial analysts were calling it the IPO of the decade. Vivienne read the announcement 3 times. Then she called Ruth. "It's time." Ruth's voice was calm. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. If I'm going to do this, it has to be now, before the IPO, while the stakes are highest. All right then. Let's build your case." They spent 3 months preparing. Every document verified, every patent comparison notarized, every piece of evidence authenticated. Vivienne hired forensic accountants to trace the money, hired document analysts to examine the signatures on the intellectual property transfers, hired medical researchers to testify about the origins of the Alzheimer's treatment. She spent the last of her settlement money, and then some, took out loans, worked extra hours. Ruth contributed her time for free, calling in favors from colleagues, leveraging her decades of reputation to build a team that couldn't be ignored. And then Vivienne saw the second announcement, the one that made everything personal again. Nathaniel Harrison was being honored at the annual Pharmaceutical Innovation Gala, receiving the Humanitarian of the Year award for his contributions to Alzheimer's research. The ceremony would feature a tribute to Dr. Marcus Cole, whose preliminary work had paved the way for Nathaniel's breakthrough. Vivienne stared at her father's name on the announcement. Preliminary work, like 20 years of research, was just a starting point. Like her father's genius was just a footnote in Nathaniel's story. Something inside her chest, something that had been cold and controlled for 5 years, ignited. She called the gala organizers the next day, used her real name for the first time in 5 years. Vivienne Cole, Dr. Marcus Cole's daughter. She wanted to sponsor a table, wanted to attend the ceremony honoring her father, wanted to be there when they celebrated his legacy. The organizers were stunned, delighted. They'd assumed she was still too heartbroken over the divorce to appear publicly. How wonderful that she was ready to step back into society. How gracious of her to support the event honoring her father. How healing this must be. Vivienne agreed to everything. Yes, how healing. Yes, how wonderful. Yes, she'd love to attend. And no, she didn't need to coordinate with Nathaniel. This was about her father, not her ex-husband. She hoped that wouldn't be a problem. Of course not, they assured her. This was about celebrating scientific achievement. Personal history was irrelevant. Vivienne hung up the phone and allowed herself the smallest smile. Personal history was about to become extremely relevant. Now, I know what you're thinking. 5 years is a long time to wait for justice. 5 years of living small, working hard, building a case, piece by piece, while the man who destroyed you gets richer and more celebrated. Some of you are probably wondering if patience is weakness, if waiting is just another form of hiding. But here's what I need you to understand. Strategic patience isn't weakness, it's power. It's choosing your moment instead of letting your moment choose you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, would you have waited 5 years or would you have fought immediately? There's no wrong answer, but I want to know what you would have done. And hit that subscribe button, because what happens next, the moment Vivienne finally steps back into the light, is going to make every single day of waiting worth it. The night of the gala, Vivienne stood in front of her mirror for a long time. The woman looking back at her was not the woman who'd left this world 5 years ago. That woman had been soft, uncertain, always trying to make herself smaller. This woman was sharp, certain, taking up exactly as much space as she deserved. She wore crimson, a color she'd avoided her entire marriage because Nathaniel said it was too bold, too attention-seeking, too much. The dress was elegant, but powerful, the kind of thing that made people look twice. Her hair was down, dark and glossy, instead of pulled back in that apologetic bun. Her makeup was dramatic. Her jewelry was her grandmother's, the pieces Nathaniel hadn't stolen for Jade. She looked like someone who'd spent 5 years becoming dangerous. Because that's exactly what she was. Ruth met her outside the venue, 86 now but still formidable in royal blue. You ready for this? I've been ready for 5 years. Remember the plan. Let him think he's safe. Let him think you're here to be gracious. And then, when everyone's watching, you burn it all down. I remember. They walked into the ballroom together. The same venue where Vivienne had been humiliated 5 years ago. The same chandeliers. The same expensive flowers. The same people who'd watched her destruction and done nothing. But everything felt different now. Because she was different. The reaction was immediate. Gasps. Whispers. Heads turning. Conversations stopping mid-sentence. Vivienne Cole was alive. Vivienne Cole was here. Vivienne Cole looked nothing like the broken woman who disappeared. She walked to her table with her head high, smiled politely at people who'd abandoned her, declined invitations to chat from people who'd called her pathetic, sat down and calmly reviewed the program while chaos swirled around her. And then she saw him, Nathaniel, across the ballroom, freezing mid-conversation when his eyes landed on her. She watched the color drain from his face, watched his hand tighten on his champagne glass, watched him say something sharp to the person next to him and start moving toward her table. But the ceremony was starting. The lights were dimming. Nathaniel had to take his seat on the stage with the other honorees. He threw one more glance at Vivienne, this one full of warning, and then turned away. The awards ceremony was exactly what Vivienne expected. Speeches about innovation and progress and the brilliant minds advancing medical science. 3 awards were given before Nathaniel's. Each recipient gave a humble speech. Each was applauded enthusiastically. And then it was time for the Humanitarian of the Year award. The presenter, a renowned neurologist, took the microphone. Our final honoree tonight needs no introduction. Nathaniel Harrison has revolutionized Alzheimer's treatment and given hope to millions of families. His groundbreaking research has set a new standard for pharmaceutical innovation. But what many people don't know is that Nathaniel's work built upon the preliminary research of Dr. Marcus Cole, who tragically passed away before seeing his early-stage work come to fruition. Tonight, we honor both men, the researcher who started the journey and the visionary who completed it. Vivienne's jaw clenched. Preliminary research, early-stage work. Her father's 20 years reduced to a footnote. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to wait. Not yet. Nathaniel took the stage to thunderous applause. He looked exactly like what he was, powerful, successful, untouchable. His speech was polished and perfect. He talked about the importance of building on the work of those who came before us, about standing on the shoulders of giants, about how Dr. Marcus Cole's contributions, though incomplete, had inspired him to push further. He thanked his team, his investors, his beautiful wife Jade, who smiled from the audience like she hadn't helped destroy his previous marriage. And then he held up the award, this crystal and gold monstrosity, and said, "This belongs to every researcher who refuses to give up, who keeps pushing even when the answers seem impossible. Thank you." The applause was deafening. People stood. The ovation went on for 2 full minutes. Nathaniel soaked it in, smiling, nodding, the picture of humble brilliance. And then he left the stage and the ceremony moved into the reception portion of the evening. Vivienne stayed seated while people mingled. She could feel eyes on her constantly, people wanting to approach, but not quite daring. Finally, inevitably, Nathaniel came to her table. He'd composed himself. The shock from earlier was gone, replaced by careful control. "Vivienne, this is unexpected. She looked up at him calmly. Hello, Nathaniel. Congratulations on your award. I didn't know you were going to be here. It's a tribute to my father. Where else would I be? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. It's good to see you looking so well. The years have been kind. They've been educational. Something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe. I hope there are no hard feelings about how things ended. It was unfortunate, but we've both moved on. Have we? I have. A wife, 2 children, a company about to go public. I assume you've found your own path as well. I have. I'm an intellectual property attorney now, specializing in patent fraud. Nathaniel's smile froze. How interesting, isn't it? I've learned so much about how patents work, how they're filed, how intellectual property is transferred, how easy it is to commit fraud if you think no one's paying attention. Vivian, his voice dropped low. What are you doing? I'm here to celebrate pharmaceutical innovation, just like everyone else. Jade appeared at his elbow then, territorial and suspicious. She'd put on weight since the carefully posed family photos. Looked tired despite the expensive dress and professional makeup. Nathaniel, they're waiting for you to talk to the Goldman investors. In a minute. Now. Jade's eyes fixed on Vivian. Well, this is awkward. I didn't expect to see you here. Why not? My father's being honored. Right. Your father's preliminary work. It must be difficult seeing what Nathaniel accomplished with it. But I suppose that's the difference between having ideas and actually executing them. Vivian smiled. It was not a kind smile. Oh, I know all about execution, Jade. And I know all about the difference between creating something and stealing it. Excuse me? We should talk. Privately. Nathaniel's hand wrapped around Vivian's arm. Now. No. Vivian pulled her arm free. I don't think we've had enough private conversations, Nathaniel. In fact, I think our problem is we've had too many private conversations and not enough public truth. What's that supposed to mean? Jade looked between them, sensing something but not understanding what. Vivian stood. The room was still buzzing with conversation, but people nearby were starting to notice. Starting to watch. Perfect. It means I have something to share. Something I think everyone here should hear. Nathaniel's face went pale. Don't. Why not? You weren't shy about sharing the truth 5 years ago, remember? In your office? When you told me exactly what kind of man you really are. Vivienne, I'm warning you. You're warning me? She laughed, and the sound cut through the nearby conversations. People were definitely watching now. You stole my father's life work. You destroyed my life. You threatened to ruin his reputation if I fought back. And you're warning me? You sound unhinged. Jade stepped forward. Someone should call security. Please do. I'd love to explain to security why I'm here. I'd love to explain it to everyone. Vivian raised her voice slightly. More heads turning. More people stopping their conversations. In fact, I think I'll do that right now. She walked toward the stage. Nathaniel tried to grab her again, but she was too fast. People were murmuring now, confused and intrigued. What was happening? Who was this woman? Wasn't that Nathaniel Harrison's ex-wife? Oh God, this was going to be dramatic. The AV technician was still at the sound booth. Vivienne had spoken to him earlier, told him she might want to play a tribute video to her father, asked if she could connect her phone to the system. He'd agreed, thinking it was sweet. Now he looked uncertain as she approached with Nathaniel chasing after her and half the room watching. I'd like to play my tribute now, Vivian said calmly. Okay. But we're not really in the program portion anymore. I think people will want to hear this. She connected her phone before anyone could stop her. The microphone system was still active from the ceremony. Perfect. Vivienne took the stage, and the room went quiet. 300 people staring at her. Nathaniel frozen at the base of the stage. Jade looking panicked. Board members of Harrison Pharmaceutical starting to look concerned. Good evening. Vivian's voice filled the ballroom. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Vivian Cole. Recently Vivian March, formerly Vivian Harrison. 5 years ago, I disappeared from this world. Many of you wondered why. Some of you created stories. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the truth. Stop her! Nathaniel was shouting at security, but they didn't know what to do. She was a sponsor. She had microphone access. What was the protocol? My father, Dr. Marcus Cole, spent 20 years developing a revolutionary Alzheimer's treatment. When he died, he left his research to me. I was his only child, his legacy. And when I married Nathaniel Harrison, I thought I was marrying someone who would honor that legacy. The room was dead silent now. This wasn't a tribute video. This was something else entirely. 5 years ago, I confronted Nathaniel about his affair. What I didn't know then was that my phone was recording our conversation. What I didn't know was that Nathaniel would confess to something much worse than adultery. She held up her phone. This recording is from 5 years ago. This is Nathaniel Harrison, in his own words, explaining exactly who he is. And then she pressed play. Her voice filled the speakers first. Younger, desperate, broken. Nathaniel, please, just tell me the truth. Do you love her? Then his voice, cold, cutting, undeniable. Love? Vivienne, I married you because you were safe, quiet. You had the right bloodline for the company's image, your father's medical research connections. That's it. The ballroom erupted in gasps. Nathaniel was shouting, trying to get onto the stage, but security was holding him back now. Not to protect Vivienne, to prevent a scene. Too late. The recording continued. Every word, every confession, every cruel revelation, the admission that he'd married her for access to her father's research, the confession that he'd stolen intellectual property, the threat to destroy her father's reputation, all of it captured in perfect clarity. When it finished, the silence was absolute. Then chaos, journalists pulling out recording devices, board members on their phones, investors demanding explanations, Jade backing away from Nathaniel like he was radioactive. But Vivienne wasn't done. A recording alone might not be enough, she said, and her voice cut through the noise. So I spent 5 years becoming an intellectual property attorney. I spent 5 years tracing every patent Harrison Pharmaceutical filed, and I spent 5 years building an irrefutable case. The screens around the ballroom lit up. Vivienne had loaded the presentation earlier, told the AV team it was her father's research history. Now those screens showed side-by-side comparisons. Her father's research notes from 15 years ago next to Nathaniel's patents from 3 years ago. Identical formulas, identical test protocols, identical everything. The treatment that's about to make Harrison Pharmaceutical $15 billion? It's stolen. The IPO you're planning in 3 months? It's built on fraud. The Humanitarian of the Year award he just received? It belongs to my father, Dr. Marcus Cole, whose name has been erased while Nathaniel profited from his genius. More screens. Forged signature analyses showing the documents Vivienne had signed were fraudulent. Timeline proving her father's research preceded Nathaniel's patents by a decade. Expert testimonies from researchers who'd worked with her father. Documentation of systematic theft. I've filed a federal lawsuit, patent fraud, intellectual property theft, forgery, and I've submitted all of this evidence to the SEC, the FDA, and every regulatory body that has oversight of Harrison Pharmaceutical. Nathaniel was screaming now, actually screaming, that she was lying, that she was a vindictive ex-wife, that none of this was real. But his voice was drowned out by the chaos around him. Investors fleeing, board members demanding emergency meetings, journalists shoving microphones toward anyone who'd talk. Vivienne looked down at him from the stage. This man who'd destroyed her life. This man who'd stolen her father's legacy. This man who'd been so certain she was too weak, too broken, too nothing to ever fight back. You told me I was nothing without you, she said quietly, but the microphone caught every word. You were wrong. You are nothing without what you stole. And now everyone knows it. She disconnected her phone, stepped off the stage, and walked out of the ballroom. Behind her, Nathaniel Harrison's entire world was collapsing. But Vivienne didn't look back. She'd spent 5 years looking forward. She wasn't stopping now. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By morning, Harrison Pharmaceuticals' stock had plummeted in pre-market trading. By noon, Nathaniel had been placed on administrative leave by the board. By evening, federal investigators had opened a criminal case. The media coverage was relentless. Every news outlet covered the story. Pharmaceutical CEO accused of massive fraud. Stolen research worth billions. The ex-wife who disappeared and came back with evidence. It was scandal and justice and betrayal, all wrapped into one irresistible story. Jade filed for divorce within 48 hours. Her statement was carefully crafted. She claimed she'd been deceived, that she'd had no knowledge of any fraud, that she was a victim too. The public didn't buy it, but it didn't matter. She got her divorce and her settlement and faded from the spotlight, presumably to find another wealthy man to attach herself to. The trial took 8 months. Vivian's case was airtight. Every piece of evidence authenticated. Every witness credible. Nathaniel's lawyers tried everything. Claimed the recording was inadmissible. Claimed the intellectual property transfer was legal. Claimed Vivian was motivated by bitterness and revenge. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Patent fraud, intellectual property theft, forgery, fraud against investors. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison, ordered him to pay $500 million in damages to Vivian, returned all patents to her name. But the bigger victory came after. Vivian stood in front of cameras and announced the creation of the Dr. Marcus Cole Foundation. Every penny of profit from the Alzheimer's treatment would fund research and patient assistance programs. The medication would be available at cost to anyone who couldn't afford it. Her father's name would be on every bottle, every research paper, every grant. "My father didn't develop this treatment to make billions of dollars," Vivian said. "He developed it to help people. That's what it's going to do." The public response was overwhelming. Patients sent letters thanking her. Researchers applied for grants. The medical community, which had stood silent while Nathaniel took credit, suddenly remembered Dr. Marcus Cole's brilliance and wanted to honor it. Vivian didn't return to society life, didn't try to reclaim her place in the world that had abandoned her. Instead, she opened a law practice with Ruth, March and Castellano, intellectual property law. They specialized in protecting researchers and inventors from exactly the kind of theft Vivian had experienced. She bought her father's old research facility and converted it into a free design school for young scientists, created scholarships in his name, built the legacy he deserved all along, and slowly, carefully, she built a new life. Not the life she'd imagined when she married Nathaniel. Something better, something real, something entirely her own. 3 years after the trial, Vivian stood in front of an auditorium full of students. She was giving the annual Dr. Marcus Cole Memorial Lecture. The tradition she'd started, the tradition that would outlive her and keep her father's name alive for generations. "My father used to tell me that the truth is like light," she said to the eager young faces looking up at her. "You can hide it temporarily. You can try to dim it. You can even try to extinguish it. But eventually it finds a crack, and when it does, it illuminates everything." She looked out at the audience, saw young researchers who'd been told they weren't good enough, saw women who'd been dismissed, saw people who'd had their ideas stolen and their voices silenced, saw herself from 5 years ago, broken and alone and certain she'd never matter. "For 5 years I lived in darkness, but I was also gathering light, piece by piece, until I had enough to shine on all the lies. To anyone who's been stolen from, whether it's your work, your voice, your dignity, or your peace, I want you to know this. Documentation is power. Truth is power. Patience is power." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And the person who tried to make you disappear, they don't get to write your ending. You do. My father's legacy isn't just the treatment helping millions of people right now. It's the lesson that real innovation, real integrity can't be stolen. It can only be honored or dishonored. And eventually, always, the world sees which is which." The applause was thunderous. Students stood. Faculty stood. This was her life now. Not revenge, not bitterness, just truth and education and building something beautiful from betrayal. After the lecture, a young woman approached her. She couldn't have been more than 20. "Ms. March, I just wanted to thank you. I was in a relationship with someone who took credit for my research. I was going to let it go because fighting seemed too hard. But your story made me realize I couldn't. I filed a complaint with my university. They investigated. He was expelled. My research is mine again. Vivian felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so proud of you. I was scared. But you showed me that being scared doesn't mean you can't fight. It just means you have to be strategic about how you fight. After the young woman left, Vivian sat alone in the empty auditorium. She thought about Nathaniel, serving his sentence in federal prison. Thought about Jade, remarried and irrelevant. Thought about the society that had mocked her, and now wanted to celebrate her. She felt nothing but quiet peace. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ruth, potential client. Young inventor. Tech company stole his patent. Wants to fight. You available? Vivian smiled. Always, she typed back. She gathered her things and walked out into the afternoon sunlight. The Marcus Cole Research Institute rose behind her. Glass and steel and possibility. Inside, 30 students were working on projects they'd never be able to afford anywhere else. Learning, creating, building futures. This was her father's legacy. And hers. Not billions of dollars or magazine covers or awards. Just truth. Just integrity. Just the quiet, permanent victory of refusing to be erased. If Vivian's story moved you, I need you to do something right now. First, hit that subscribe button for Cedar Light Love Stories. We share stories of people who refused to stay broken. People who chose truth over comfort. People who built something beautiful from betrayal. Second, absolutely destroy that like button if you believe that patience and truth will always defeat power and lies. Third, comment below and tell me, what's the most important lesson you're taking from Vivian's story? Is it documentation? Is it patience? Is it the courage to fight even when you're terrified? I read every single comment, and your insights matter to me. They matter to this community we're building. And if you know someone going through betrayal right now, someone who feels powerless, someone who needs to remember that their story isn't over, share this video with them. Let them know that silence can be strategic, that retreating isn't weakness, that the truth is always worth waiting for. The final truth about Vivian's story isn't that she got revenge. It's that she got free. Free from a man who'd tried to make her small. Free from a society that had valued her only for her connections. Free from the voice in her head that said she was nothing without someone else's approval. She'd spent 5 years in darkness, yes. But she'd spent those 5 years becoming someone who could stand in the light without apology. Nathaniel Harrison had been right about one thing. She'd been nothing when she was with him. But not because she lacked worth, because she'd given her worth away, handed it over piece by piece to someone who'd never valued it. The woman who walked out of that ballroom with evidence of his crimes wasn't that the same woman who'd walked out of his office 5 years earlier. That woman had been destroyed. This woman had been forged. And that's the real lesson. You can be broken and still become something stronger than you were before. You can lose everything and still build something worth having. You can be betrayed and still choose trust again. You can be silenced and still find your voice. But it requires patience. It requires strategy. It requires the absolute certainty that you are worth fighting for, even when no one else is fighting for you. Vivian Cole March, intellectual property attorney, founder of the Marcus Cole Foundation, protector of researchers and dreamers and people whose voices had been stolen, stood in the sunlight and smiled, not because her enemy had fallen, but because she had risen. And that was victory. This is Cedar Light Love Stories, reminding you that your ending isn't written by the people who hurt you. It's written by your courage to tell the truth, your willingness to wait for the right moment, your refusal to let someone else's blindness define your worth. The light always finds a way through the cracks. Always. You just have to be patient enough to let it. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and remember that the person who tried to make you disappear, they were only ever showing you how powerful you'd become once you stopped hiding. Stay unstoppable.